So I guess we'll start the webinar. Good evening to all of you here, and welcome to today's webinar, Coming Together in the Times of COVID-19. I hope that all of you are well and safe during these trying times. My name is Phuntsal Techanyangchen from Bhutan, from the 2019 batch of IBYS, and I'll be your moderator for today, along with...
Hi, my name is Akanksha. I am from the IBYS 2018 batch. I'm from India and I'm a filmmaker based out of Delhi and Bangalore.
So this webinar is organized by the ex-participants of the India-Bhutan Youth Summit, along with the Royal Institute of Governance and Strategic Studies in Bhutan and the Center of Escalation of Peace in India. We are all aware of the pandemic that has changed the landscape of how we communicate and how we connect with each other. And with social distancing, we are going to have to think of new ways how to keep ourselves connected for meaningful conversation. And this webinar is an effort to do this. So today we will be discussing about issues and challenges in these times, the good practices and inspiring effort that was seen, and lastly, the opportunities and way forward. Before we start with the webinar, let me first set down some house rules and also give a brief about today's structure. So only the video and only the video for the speakers and moderators will be on, and the microphone will be turned on only when it's their turn to speak to reduce any disturbance. So audience, please, I request you to ensure that your microphone is on mute and your camera is off throughout this session. I would like to request the audience to send any questions you have at any point of the session to the chat box. We have divided this session into 3 tracks, and 2 speakers, one from Bhutan and another from India, will speak for the first few minutes, and then the floor will be opened for other panelists to add their point as well, which they will do by raising their hands. Each track will last approximately 15 minutes, and after the last track, we will open the floor for questions from the audience that has been sent in the chat box. So this session is also being recorded, and the video will be put up on YouTube by CEP. So without further ado, let's start the session with the introduction of the panelists. So if the panelists from the first track could please introduce themselves.
Yeah, hello, my name is Akash Goel. I was a part of the India-Bhutan Youth Summit 2018 batch. And I'm currently working on establishing a financial services business based out of Chandigarh. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tupin Sharap, and I was also one of the participants of 2019 IBYS batch. And currently, I'm studying at Kedu College of Business Studies, and it's nice to meet you guys. Thank you.
Speakers from the second track.
Hello, everyone. To introduce myself, I am Kili Seldin. I'm also one of the participants of 2019 batch of IBYS, and currently I'm pursuing my 3rd year degree in College of Language and Culture Studies, which is in Trongsa, Bhutan.
Good evening, I'm Jasil. I'm from India. Currently, I'm running a social enterprise based out of Kerala.
Speakers from the 3rd track, please.
Hello, everyone. I hope you are keeping well.
Hello, I'm Sound, currently as a teacher.
Yeah. Hi. So yeah, my name is Nimrit. I'm from the 2019 IBYS batch, and I'm a law graduate from India.
Yeah, thank you for your introductions. And now we will start with our webinar.
Okay, thank you so much. So again, like Funchuk mentioned, we will start without further ado. And so we'll begin with our first track. And so my question, the first question at least goes out to the speakers, which are Akash and Thupten, which is that, so obviously the pandemic has led to a bunch of changes across the world in many, many different fields and, across various factors. But how do you think it has changed the day-to-day lives, particularly of the youth? So if I could ask Akash to begin, please.
Yeah, so I think to my mind, there are three prominent changes which have happened in our day-to-day lives because of COVID. The foremost being our usage of technology, which has gone up tremendously. It might be in terms of our consumption of data, entertainment via OTT platforms, education, video conferencing, social gatherings, and staying connected with people. I think all of these things have gone fairly digital, and I think all of us are grappling on a daily basis with how to adapt to these sudden changes. And I also believe that the adoption of all these technologies is going to ramp up in the post-COVID world. The second issue, the second change that have happened in our day-to-day lives is I think all of us have started looking inwards. I mean, there is a lot of introspection and self-reflection that is going on these days, I'm assuming, in all our lives. We have started reconnecting with our families, friends, our colleagues whom we haven't spoken to in years, which has resulted in a substantial increase in the level of contentment in all our lives. And I think this entire process of introspection and reflection has into figuring out our own identities, interests, and things we are passionate about is going on a daily basis in all our lives. The third change that has the third profound change that has happened in our lives is, I think, we have started investing heavily in upgrading our skill sets. I mean, especially in the context of India, there is a vast mismatch in the skill sets of industry and the graduates. So I think people have started investing in the skill sets. They are trying to constantly evolve, adapt, and change with these uncertain times. And I think this entire process of learning, educating ourselves, and gaining a perspective has become fairly simpler, easier, affordable, and accessible with the vast developments in technology. So I think these are three most profound and prominent changes that have happened in our day-to-day lives, and we all are trying to adapt to them.
That's really nice. I really appreciate that you put a positive spin to the fact that there have been some positive changes in our life as a result of the pandemic. Thupten, can I ask you as well to respond to this?
All right. Thank you, Akansha. I think it is evident that the pandemic has, as mentioned by the moderator, has affected our day-to-day lives. I think fundamental things such as how we greet to and interact with each other has been altered. For instance, no more hugs or handshakes. Instead, now we bow to each other, or we just do a salute to greet each other. And the use of face marks is one evident thing, evident change that we can see nowadays. And it is becoming mandatory for not just for youth, but for every individual. And for youth in particular, I think the education process itself has changed because now the normal education system has been replaced by the online education system. And it will be a new normal for students to, especially for youth, to cope up, I think, for indefinite time. And furthermore, I think social or physical distancing to maintain a gap about 6 feet has become a prevailing practice to reduce the risk of spreading the virus. And it will be there for indefinite time. And it is also becoming a mandatory thing. And lastly, I think a very mundane activity, that is washing hand. Now the frequency of washing hand has also changed now to spread. To reduce the risk of spreading the virus. Now we are required to wash our hands daily or frequently. I think in these ways, the daily lives of not just youth, but also individuals' life has been affected.
Okay, yeah, that's extremely true, and that's great that you guys have both looked at a kind of macro and micro perspective and lens at the way that COVID has affected all our lives on a, again, day-to-day basis. So my second question is that, what are some of the main concerns that you see that have come to light because of the crisis, and what are the issues that have been exacerbated because of it? Thupten or Akash, either of you can take the lead.
Okay, thank you. The issues that has been worsened by the pandemic, I think one major issue is social media addiction. It was always an issue, in fact, a major issue for youth before pandemic. However, the pandemic has just magnified it with restricted mobility and restricted outdoor games. I think youth, especially in towns and cities, are spending their major portion of time on social medias and online games, which will escalate the chances of social media addiction and the related risk posed by social media addiction. And second thing, as mentioned in an article written by Texas Network of Youth Services, it proclaims that youth are now facing a greater risk of commercial exploitation, maybe because now youths are in a juncture where they are facing a lot of stress due to job loss or economic hardship. Now this creates an opportunity for the commercial predators, for the youth to exploit for financial hopes and job hopes. I think these are the pertinent issues where I think the youth are being the issues that has been exacerbated the pandemic. And the concern is the quality of education now. As mentioned earlier, now the normal education has been replaced by the online education. So now the question comes, will the online education be able to act effectively as the normal education? This is one of the concerns posed by the pandemic, I think. Thank you.
Great, yeah, thank you so much. Akash?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of issues which have been exacerbated by this entire COVID situation. The foremost being, I think, unemployment, which all of us are dealing with. I think due to vast disruptions by technology, massive mismatch in skill sets, and I think all these things have left a large number of people in our country, especially in India, unemployed. I think a vast number of migrant labor who were suddenly left with no choice with the imposition of lockdown, who had left for their hometowns, faced many difficulties in finding employment opportunities, which has now also resulted in a unique problem of exploitation of the very limited labor that's left in towns in certain key industries. And I think as far as the skilled human resource is concerned, who were laid off by their companies, who have largely relocated to their hometowns, I think they're going to find difficulty in finding employment opportunities unless they invest in upgrading their skill sets and try to be more productive and useful to their organizations. So I think unemployment is one of the major issues which I think all of us will have to deal with in the near future unless we invest in upgrading our skill sets. The second issue is, I think, mental health. I think we Indians, especially, were not used to living lives with peace and contentment, and were always in chase of materialistic possessions, as compared to our Bhutanese counterpart, who are very much whose lifestyle is vastly different from ours. And I think this sudden COVID emergence of COVID situation has brought those issues to the forefront. I think mental health was always an issue, but I think COVID has just fastened its pace, and now all of us have started to realize that it's actually something to talk about. And now the conversations have started happening. People have started consulting people. They talk about these things freely, and yeah, I think mental health is something which we all of us have to deal with, and I'm sure all of us are already having certain kinds of mental health issues, so at some level. And I mean, to my mind, these are two of the most profound issues which we will have to deal with in the near future: unemployment and mental health. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. Can I open up just briefly to the rest of the panelists that we have with the other four, to just offer your views on the same two questions? Would you like to say anything on it?
Yeah, I would like to add something. So, Jasil.
Yes. Okay. Hi. So your videos will. Sure. Please continue.
Yeah. So I was reading a UN report 2 days back. It was saying that the am I audible?
Yeah. There's a little bit disturbance, but you can continue talking. Let's see if that helps.
Yeah. Here it is actually raining. That is why.
That's why. Okay. No, it's okay now. So please continue.
Yeah. So I was reading a UN report 2 days back. It was saying that the indicators of SDG, when they considered post-COVID, it has actually escalated. The rich and poor divide escalated. The years and years of work to reduce poverty, ways to reduce lack of education are actually backfired. I mean, it is in a low ratio right now. So our development agenda that the world countries are actually taking part as a collaborative effort has been reduced. So it is one issue. And another one is the poor people, the people who don't have enough necessities are the most who are affected by the COVID. So the rich and poor divide is actually being really escalating. We can take this by quoting some examples from Africa or from even India, because now our COVID issues are only in cities. But based on some report by Harvard Institute of Medical Studies, they are saying that when the COVID reaches to Indian villages, we are going to have big issues. So these are the two things I would like to point out, because the issues of poor, the issues of people who don't actually have the means to make the two ends are actually being not discussed in most of the platforms.
Absolutely, absolutely, I agree. Is there anyone else on the panel who'd like to add their 2 bits on this?
Yeah. Akanksha?
Yeah.
Audible?
Yeah, you are. Please go ahead.
So actually, furthering on what Jasil just said, how the pandemic has actually, further magnified the divide between the rich and the poor. One thing like I would like to point out towards is the gap in education. How Thuktin pointed out, how education has right now shifted to an online mode. It is, further like important for us to notice that not all of us have the technology and even the right infrastructure to, to avail this opportunity for online education. Like how you'll see, 70% of the population in India is comes from the rural areas, and wherein most of the people, they don't have access to internet, they don't have smartphones, they don't have laptops. So this pandemic will further magnify this gap between educational facilities and further bring down the give rise to that scale. So yeah,
absolutely, that's true. Anyone else that any of the Bhutanese participants like to add the little bits? Because this is so clear, because this is again such a deeply, I think, intrinsic issue to every country, and everyone has their own experience of it, which is why I entirely understand the Indian participants talking about India as their prime example, where they can see the effects that COVID is spreading, especially the divide between the rich and poor. And that's something that has really become, thank God, finally a talking topic in our intellectual circles, and generally amongst people now. So is there anyone else who would like to add a little bit about it? Or should we move on to the next track?
I would
Kimmy,
like
yes.
to.
Please go ahead.
It's not adding, but I think I'm just repeating the similar points.
No
what I
issues.
feel is that the challenges are the lack of resources, like especially for the students. I also would like to comment on the education part, which the earlier participants already done, which I feel is that what Nimrod said, for us, most of the Bhutanese students come from rural area, and they don't have access to laptops, mobile phones, or some don't even are easily comfortable with the online education system, which is e-learning. And because of this situation, because of this drastic change, everyone is facing problem, and students who are coming from rural areas, they don't have access to those resources, which is why their studies, it is really affecting their studies, because the teachings are going through online, and they don't have access to that, and their studies are really disturbed, especially students there was a case in one of the rural part, some students even they end up in doing miserable thing, like they have committed suicide, because it was reported uh, they didn't have access to phone, and then the boy, unfortunately, he took his life because of that. And I feel the COVID-19 situation is not just affecting a normal routine, but also sadly it is taking innocent lives. And to talk about another part is the job, unemployment, not just unemployment, those who are employed, like people who are working at the tourism and then resort, their business is greatly affected, because all the their main resources are stopped. Their main resources is when their work stops, so their income also, it is really affected. And then that is why it really affected their uh, income of their basic necessities, which is why I feel that it is this is the main issues that one of the main issues that is happening in our country. And one thing was that those people who are coming from foreign countries, they were all settled in foreign countries, but when they have to come back, because it was also affected in their working place, so when they have to come back, they didn't have proper place, and then they all those people have to start their life again. So it was really difficult to cope up with with this devastating situation. So I feel that COVID-19 situation has drastically affected our normal routine, having difficult time in coping up with the new things.
Absolutely. Right. No, you're absolutely correct about that. And I think, again, this is something that is one of the issues that there doesn't seem to be really any resolution for, but is something that is across the world, how, especially unemployment and a lack of access to education. So maybe we can pick this up later, but for now, I'd like to close this track and give the floor to Funchuk to take over for the next one. Thank you so much. Funchuk, can you hear me? One second. Can everyone else hear me? Or is it?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just got reconnected. Okay.
Okay, great. So close on to you.
So in the first track, we have heard about the challenges and how things have been hard, but we all know that there has been a few good things out of this situation. And it's important for us to focus on these good things as well to keep us motivated and inspired. So let's move on with the second track where we'll be speaking about good practice and inspiring efforts. And let's start with let me just ask a question, which is what is being done to address the pandemic and its far-reaching effects in your individual questions. I mean, individual countries. So let's start with Jasil.
Yeah. So we are facing largest challenge after the World Wars. Since the World War, we haven't faced these much of a big challenge. It is difficult, it is challenging, and a lot of people are actually clueless. But I feel the world is not same anymore. I mean, we all changed. The priorities are changed. How we behave, what are our things to do, these are all changed. So what I feel is what I recognize from the statement of the world leaders are COVID is here to stay. It is us who need to move on. It is us who need to learn how to manage our life by taking care of these challenges. So let me start with an image. I mean, I'm not sharing the image, but I can just describe the image. So it was yesterday. I saw a wonderful image in Instagram. So it is by Cristiano Ronaldo. Hope you know him. I'm just telling the story because I felt so much motivated after seeing that. Because Italy has faced a lot of challenges because of COVID, and some Cuban doctors has arrived at Italy to help them manage the crisis. So this footballer actually gifted a T-shirt signed by him to every doctors. So the story is, he gifted a T-shirt just as a part of giving some token of appreciation or some kind of motivation. But it shows us or it gives us a great message because world countries are actually helping each other. So this is something we really need to look into it because these are some of the models we can see. And another thing that I would like to point out is UN Under Secretary General Antonio Guterres complimented India for providing medicines, PPE kits, and basic necessities to other countries. So India in its capacity is also helping other countries. So we can take so much examples of collaboration and good models of managing COVID. Another thing is the knowledge sharing aspect because since I'm a student of whatever things that is happening outside, I really wish to learn. So I mostly use online learning tools. So something really amazing happened was, most of the online education portals, audiobooks and everything, some publishers as well, provided their content to students. It can be accessible without paying much money or mostly for free. So this knowledge sharing part also something that we really need to appreciate. And another thing, of course, is about vaccination. World countries and scientists are actually collaborating with each other, sharing knowledge, sharing good practices among scientists to actually discover a vaccine. So there are some political aspects as well, but despite of that, I feel the collaboration, the good models are a great motive to move on and face the challenge with the open heart. And I mean, this is something really inspiring from the leaders and the countries that is actually collaborating. Despite the politics, people are actually collaborating. So it is something we as young people should take on as a motivation to work on.
Thank you, Jasil. I really liked how you talked about how we should now take COVID as a part of our lives and manage and move on with it. And I see that there has been a lot of inspiring things, and people have been doing their own things to, um, help in their own little ways. So let's move on with Kile.
Well, I have already covered that the COVID-19 situation has drastically affected our normal cycle, but not just looking at the difficulties, but looking at what is currently being done should also be noticed. Because specifically in Bhutan, our country, both from religion side and from the government side, everyone is trying their best to overcome this situation. And to talk about that, from the religion side, the monk body led by the Jakampo has initiated, recited prayer for the well-being for the people all over the world. And from the other side, in this devastating situation, when everyone is worrying about themselves, and their own shelter. We have someone who was thinking beyond the household and was making sure that the whole nation is safe, is a safer place to live in. So, like, that is our king. Like, he thought not just about one or two; he thought about whole nation. Like, for those people who are greatly affected by this situation, um, he initiated like Royal Kidu Fund. Royal Kidu Fund is for those people who are hit by this pandemic and making sure that their normal, they, it was really people were really fortunate to have such a monarch, and especially like as we already know that the red zone people were the old age people. So His Majesty the King sure that the people who were under this zone was given extra care by like he gave medicines to those old aged people, and he also gave basic to them. Like he provided basic necessities such as, and most importantly, youth. In this devastating time, the young youths came forward and they like uh, they joined in this is like guardian of peace when one cannot do it all. So everyone came together, even the youth, like in 40th batch this, so like over 2000 people joined this. So in that batch, almost mostly it was youth who were challenge. So like I feel that in this situation, like everyone is trying their best to overcome this situation, and even the youth, they are coming together, spending their time fruitfully. Like they are joining, they are coming forward, they are uh, doing their best in their own way. Like even those who didn't join such thing, they were staying at home, uh, uh, creating awareness about the COVID-19 situation to the people who are uneducated. So like I feel that not just the negative thing, but also in this situation, in this type of situation, we learned that um, we can come together and work as one, and there is like nothing that we cannot achieve. And I feel that we can still achieve if we all come together and work as one.
Thank you for that very inspiring views that you had. Now, so youths in particular, so our group have faced unique challenges of our own, right? So, how do you think that the youth issues in particular are being dealt with? Um, let's start with Jasil. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Before I start, I would like to appreciate Tuktan and Agash for pointing out most of the issues has been faced by youth. They clearly stated the issues by youth. So I'm not going to get into more about the issues faced by youth, but still I would like to add few things. Education is one of the thing, because the career of the 2020 batch is in a very difficult situation. Those people are really clueless, and they don't really know how to manage it or how the world has been changing. So they are facing that issue, and it is like depression in 2008 period in US, or some biggest challenge that the world has faced. So this generation or the previous generation has never come across something like this. So career wise, young people are facing a great issue. And another one is, as Akash mentioned clearly, mental health. Because I will give an example. From March 25th to July, 66 students from my state in Kerala, which is 3.5 crore populated populated state, has committed suicide. 66 people, young people of below 18 years of age, have committed suicide. It is really difficult. And, it is something really made me so much down, sad, and everything, because it is something we can't accept, or it is something really disappointing, because people are actually don't have that practice or tools to manage the situation. And one more thing is the fun friendship part of youth, because uh, they have never had this kind of situation in which they all get disconnected. So I feel these are some of the issues. And do I need to point out any models of change, or it is in next question or something? I mean, there are some stories of youth actually managing this crisis. So do I need to say some examples, or do we have one more question for that?
In the interest of time, I think we should move on to what Kili has to say first, and then we can address this during the question answer session.
Sure.
Yeah. So Kili, if you would.
So like the challenges, it could be one education, like it is already mentioned, like because of the drastic change in education, everyone is facing problem, but just not looking at the problem, we could also see that still learning through online e-learning. So when I think it is a good opportunity that we are learning through e-learning, and we got to learn something new. And then while we were in the school and in colleges, we were learning what just the tutor taught. But I feel that, I personally feel that through online, we got to explore more about explore more, and then we also got to appreciate, like if someone is not there for us, then we won't be able to, like, we face lots of difficulties. So that was very a good thing, because we got this opportunity to appreciate that what was someone doing for us. And then another thing could be like our friends told, like mental health. It really, affects our mental health, but not just like, as I already said, like what we have heard so far is like youth are coming forward. They are um, uh, they are they are coming forward and then initiating, like they are doing farming, and then uh, trying in their own ways to sustain their needs. Like they are donating dairy products and then vegetables to those who are staying in quarantine facilities. So it's a very good thing. At the same time, it is very challenging.
Thank you for your answers. Now, I'd like to open the floor for other panelists if they have anything to add to any of the two questions that I just asked.
I'd like to say something. Like Kila said, everything is true. We are very thankful and grateful to the government and our king. And I just wanted to mention this small incident as in a small news. I think it was 2 or 3 months back. 4 students from a high school, they actually came up with a cute little robot with the aim of helping the people in the medical team in transferring, like taking things from one place to another. And that was quite nice coming from really small students. And it did bring out a really positive atmosphere throughout in the entire country, actually. So yeah, I just want to mention that. Thanks.
Thank you for that very inspiring story. So does anyone want to add?
Can I say something? Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Just wanted to add one point on what Kile said. I think a maxim goes like that: tough time brings us together, right? So I think under RUB colleges, under RUB Royal University of Bhutan, different colleges contributed, I think, more than 200,000 newtons to the government. And individual students from our college, we were able to contribute 44,000 nultrums to Kidu Fund to His Majesty, so that it can help in a small ways to the affected people in a country, especially the tourism sector. So these were the good practices that we have been doing. And another thing is about the mental health issue. I think Bhutan has initiated, I think, helpline for those who are going through mental issues, mental crisis. So these are the good practices that in a country that we are carrying on and will be, I hope so, carried for indefinite time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we should move on to the next track. So, Akansha.
Sure, thank you so much. Again, thank you. I must reiterate for sharing these incredibly positive stories. I think in times like this, it's stuff like this that makes us smile, and that's a great place to start. So carrying on to the third track, which is particularly, my first question is essentially that with social distancing measures in place across the world, what are the ways in which the youth can kind of come together to bring about meaningful change and, you know, become a positive force in their respective communities? So if I could ask Savan to maybe start.
I think I'll start with the education.
Sure, yeah.
We've been repeating education a lot, but instead of actually not the mainstream education, but we could encourage education as youths, because we have a lot of influence. I mean, in social media, it's we are so active in social media, and if a friend tells you, a friend will know what you're interested in more than your parents. Even though you have taken this course, but they know that you're interested in something else. So someone could be a gamer, and then maybe he loves programming. There's a course, check it out. Or someone who always goes to social events, who talks in social platforms. Here's something on human psychology, check it out. So I think if we encourage education among ourselves, we could come out of this even more prepared for whatever is going to happen after this major world event. Another thing is, I think moving forward, our economy is it's very uncertain. There's a lot of uncertainty, and especially when it comes to Bhutan, government spending. I mean, it's a small nation, and then you know how the economic situations are, and government is spending a lot on multitude of areas. So recovery is going to be very tough after all of this is over. So I think there is very minimal, there isn't much contribution that we think can do as youths in a personal level, but it does not leave out the option of volunteering. We know that we are youths. Youths, we are strong, we are active, and even medically, we are actually more immune to the virus. So I think we should volunteer. We should have that spirit of volunteerism. We should actually go forward and do the things. Take the things into our own hands. You are saving a lot of budget. I mean, you know, the things that government does for the sake of manpower. So I think that is it.
Okay, thank you so much. Nimrat, can I ask you to respond to the same question as well?
Oh yeah. So continuing from where Saban's left, I would like to say a very, bring your attention to a very small thing. Before focusing on the large things or the big things around us, losing out opportunities, losing out jobs, and prospects for further education. I think how the youth today, they can harness and be the forebringers of change. I think that will happen via a change in our perspective. So it is basically how we as individuals perceive the things around us to be. I believe it's about moving on from that perspective of whether the glass is half full or half empty, and changing it to like harboring a more positive outlook towards the challenges that surround us right now. So like, the previous speakers, how they pointed out, like Jasil and Kinley, they spoke about how these pandemic situation, it has actually brought together the community. The community is knitted together much in a, in a very strong fabric as it was before this pandemic. We are, we as individuals are realizing how important it is to lead together, and walk together in a group, and try to like curb our individual and individual desires, which are basically rooted in materialism. And once we achieve this state of like inherent change via a change in perspective and having a more positive outlook, I think we'll be better individuals ourselves, and we'll be able to foster a bigger change to the environment that surrounds us. So I think one I would like to list like 2 or 3 ways how we can like radiate this internal change towards our external environment. So like Thupten pointed out how there is a probability that youth might get addicted to social media, and how we'll actually become like servants to this social media monster. I would like to point out a very important point over here. Like, I think the most important tool that the youth right now has is this empowerment that has been fostered by social media. The opportunities on social media are actually endless. Now it is upon us to get creative and get down to the field and come up with like innovative ways to raise voices, to discuss ideas amongst us, to foster like solutions to the challenges that we are talking about right now, like be it mental health or job loss or whatever. I think like that is one important way. Next point, next way, like Sawan pointed out, is a spirit of volunteerism. So I see a number of NGOs around us who are actually doing the groundwork. They are helping out the underserved people, and I think we as youth, we can contribute very actively to the efforts of these NGOs and even the government per se. Like in my state, I think like I hail from Punjab in India, and in my state, the Punjab police, they have launched a program wherein they have launched the services, volunteering service under the Punjab police. So I see many active youngsters who are volunteering with the police right now. They are aiding them, and they are like contributing their bit to this adverse situation right now. So I think like through these few like some of these strategies, I think we as youth we can actually be the harbingers of change in these stressful times.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your respective stories. So my next question is, how do you think the relationship and especially the kind of collaboration between the youth of India and Bhutan be made more effective? Again, Sawan, if I could ask you to begin.
I think, like Nimrat said, social media is the biggest platform. I mean, we're all in a lockdown. I am right now quarantined, and I couldn't even get a go because I couldn't go out. But I think social media is the most powerful platform here. And one thing as we move forward, I think we can, especially when it comes to mental health and mainstreaming mental health, I think that is very important. We are now realizing how important mental health is. I mean, all these measures are taken. But the thing is, it should have been realized way before. So as we move forward, I think mainstreaming mental health, and maybe even there's an idea of opening up hotlines, because it's always opening up to someone anonymous is always it's always better than opening up to someone we know, because we do not want to burden that person. So I think when it comes to mental health, it's extremely important to find out ways to actually collab and spread awareness through social media. Another thing is there are so many platforms where we can come up with competitions and places to actually make youths and make other people as well think and contribute their ideas. Yes, I think that that's one very important part where we can collaborate.
Okay, great. Nimrat, if you could respond as well.
So yeah. So, moving further to like how the youth in India and Bhutan, how we can contribute to this adverse situation together, like, and even, foster a very cooperative, like collaboration for the future. I feel like, one way to do is to, keep this more of, like indulging with each other, talking to each other, sharing ideas, alive. And one thing, one way that we can, foster, through which we can foster this is, I think, again, the medium of social media again, because, India and Bhutan, we can't travel every day, we can't talk on phones every day. It's not very viable solution. So I think like the tool of social media is very important. Like, let's say, why can't we have a social media community, wherein the youth from India and the youth from Bhutan, we share like how, how each of the countries, they are, coming up with solutions to various problems, like, let's say, mental health, environmental crisis, job loss, and certain other challenges also. I believe, when we exchange the ideas and when we exchange the solution, their applicability increases by manifold. So, I think like Bhutan is a great example for environmental conservation. And I believe, India will have a lot to learn from that country. So, I look forward to hearing, people and my friends from Bhutan, they share their, like ideas, they share their vision, and they share their actual, implementable plans in their country with, Indians. So, that is like one way through which I think this collaboration will suffice in the future also, and will not be only limited to the current times. So yeah. So
okay, great. Thank you so much. And I think this is the entire point. The fact that we're also a part of this situation right now, in the sense that we've all gotten the opportunity to be a part of a forum where we have the ability to discuss, the opinions and the kind of views and experiences really of people from two different countries is part of the way that the collaboration obviously can continue. So this is a great place to start. And I think I speak for everyone when I say we're so like happy and lucky to be here. So that is the end of our 3 tracks. I'm very, very happy to see that we've gotten lots of questions from the audience. So if I could ask Bunchuk to take over the question answer session, and we'll go over them with her. Thank you.
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to thank the audience for the many questions that you have asked and for your active participation. So I feel like it will not be very efficient for us to go through each question, but I have tried to kind of group them into a certain aspect. So the first, I think about 4 people have asked about how the pandemic is, how it is an environmental issue, and also I think it relates to both in the present. So how the pandemic is actually, I don't know, affecting the environment right now, and like what we are going to see post the pandemic. So after we open up our economies and then everything is working again, so how do you think the environment will look, and what do you think are some of the issues that we're going to be facing? So is anyone interested in answering this question?
Can I go?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll just answer it very shortly. I think, as pointed out by the one who posed the question, I think it is post-pandemic will be, of course, an environmental issue, because I saw in one of the posts on Facebook that the discarding of masks and gloves used by the people are not properly dumped, and they are scattered all over. So it is posing a threat to environment. And of course, as I think after the post-pandemic, that many governments will lift the environmental rules and to make it likely so that they can exploit the environment to revive the economy of the country. So I think in this kind, this will be an environmental threat. The pandemic will be a threat to environment. I think in this way. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So is anybody else interested in answering?
Yeah. I would like to appreciate Cyril for sharing the Environmental Ministry notification that has happened in India. Even though the date for objection has extended to August 15th or something, but these are some of the issues that we really need to take care of, because as Duptan pointed out, government are actually trying to exploit the nature for the economic prosperity, and I don't blame the government because it is a need of the time. But one of the positive aspect I noticed was young people are actually changing. They are actually looking to the world like with more concern and with more enthusiasm, because they have realized that the climate change is something we need to work on. And I feel after the COVID outbreak, a lot of people, a lot of young people have been coming forward to work on environmental crisis. So this is something I experienced in my organization, because we are trying to compile some objectory letter to the government of India against the environmental notification that is happening right now. So I got more responses. So I feel more young people are, open their eyes after seeing the pandemic. So from young people's hand, they have realized the issues of environment and they really feel they need to work on it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So does anybody else want to add? Or we can move on with the next question. So the next question was asked by about 3 people again, and it is being related to how the COVID situation has changed a lot of the education system, and classes are being taken online. So do you think that there is a need for our governments to address this change and to readdress the education system? And do you think that the digital classroom is the future for us? So any one of the panelists can answer this.
So thank you for the question. Actually, talking about whether the digital classroom will be a future for us, actually it depends upon, it's a very subjective field. It will vary from country to country. It will, be subjective on the basis of how developed the country is, where the population of the country comes from. And, talking like particularly about India, like I don't see like digital education as a near future in, for us, because most of the population, they don't have access to technology. They don't have access to phones, and they don't have access to all the basic infrastructure that will be needed to transform the field of education into a digital one. So I don't see that as a prospective future for our country, though that can be the reality for some of the schools, or like a very small proportion of the schools, whose student populace, they come from urban areas with all the requisite facilities that they have with the set level of technology. But like frankly, like I don't see that as a very viable option for us as a country. Yeah. So what was the second part of this question? Sorry.
So it was how do you think that we need to readdress our education system?
Yeah, this pandemic has actually like exacerbated like how the education system is functioning right now, and we don't have sufficient like first of all, the teachers were the teachers who were supposed to further this agenda for like e-education, they themselves weren't trained before. So for a lot of time to thrive the education amidst this challenging situation was to first was to first like equip the teachers with the right knowledge about how to facilitate e-education. And then there was a large lapse in time, and then there was large lapse in the efforts, because that not all the schools and not everyone is equipped to these systems of like understanding and how the entire mode of operation is carried out. So yeah, it was a challenge. In the future, like I think it is very important for the education system to be thrived in a way that the teachers and the students, they are made more technology friendly. They are made more like e-savvy, and they know how to operate the systems. So I think like that way, from a technology perspective, like that is the change I would like to see, us harboring. And I believe like this change, it won't be only limited to the arena of education. It will, I think, spread to the businesses also. And most of the like recent notification that I came about was how Tata consultancy services, how they foresee a digital future for their like the job sector, how they see most of their employees even after this pandemic situation, working from home. So yeah, so there is a greater need for us to like every one of us to like become like e-savvy, and give a boost to this culture once everything is like soon enough, whenever this situation is normalized to an extent. And I think next step in that direction would be for the government to come up with plans and agendas wherein technology and infrastructure is transferred to the areas which are lacking those right now. So yeah, I think that can be like one step ahead for that.
Thank you for your answer. I think I really agree with what Nima just said, and it's more to do with the gap, where the gap which we talked about earlier about the rich and the poor, and here it's more of a gap about access to information and access to other kinds of resources that students are facing in the education system right now. So, does any one of the other panelists want to share their views on any additional views?
Yeah, Nimrod actually articulated really well the role of government in addressing the crisis. But I would like to add one more thing, that is the role of community. Because nowadays, the COVID situation has clearly demanded us to have a community based, stakeholder based education. Because if one student in a community doesn't have access to education, the role of community is really important, because in a situation like this, government can actually do everything. Government need civil service organizations, NGOs, and the people. So one example I would like to say is the example from my state in Kerala, because we were able to give online access to every student in the state. So it's a state with a population of 3.5 crore, and the state is able to provide online access to each and every student. So it is something they did with the help of communities, because it is the community, it is the people, it is the CSOs, it is the NGOs who come forward, collected money and donated digital gadget to students. So government was actually a facilitator kind of role. The community did the part. So I feel government and community need to work together to bridge the gap that is actually exist in India or any other place.
Thank you. So I guess we'll move on with the next question. So the next question relates with the stay-at-home rule that we have been following nowadays, and because of the stay-at-home rule, there has been a rise in domestic violence. For it's been said, and the statistics have shown that there has been a rise in domestic violence. So the question says that how the situation is for women in Bhutan. So I'd just like to add how the situation is for women in India as well. So any of the panelists can answer this. Anyone?
Did not understand the question.
It's to do with the domestic violence, and maybe let's add like what each of our countries or what we are as a community doing to reduce domestic violence, because a lot of people are having to stay at home, and then stats have shown that domestic violence has been increasing a lot. So what are your views on this?
So maybe if we can start with some of the Bhutanese participants. So from what I reading as a question, the idea is to kind of talk about, again, what women are going through, and generally, so in your social circles or any news pieces that you've read about or come across, is there anything that, kind of relates or pertains to this? Because I know, for example, in India, there are a couple of course, it's making the rounds, but this very famous Indian filmmaker called Nandita Das has released a video, a home. She shot everything at home. I think it was called "Listen" or "Listen to Me." And the idea behind that was to raise awareness about domestic violence issues, in the country. So I don't know at the kind of infrastructural and governmental level what's being done, but definitely it's kind of been a part of our general conversation. So at the same time, so this question is kind of also asking, whether this is an issue in Bhutan, which I mean, you're free to answer, and how people are dealing with it. So if the Bhutanese participants could kind of shed some light on this.
I think I'll add a few points on that. Yes, I think gender violence has been one of the issues in our country as well, prior to pandemic and during pandemic as well. And I think during pandemic, the number has escalated, gender violence has escalated. And only way to combat this gender violence is, I think, by educating people and making them aware of the violence and the consequences of the violence. I think I think most of the NGOs are doing that, but still, I think we need to streamline that, especially during this pandemic. I think in Bhutan, it is also one of the issues.
Yeah. So I'd just like to add something to what Thupten just said. And there's an NGO called the National Council for Women and Children in Bhutan. And I've been seeing a lot more effort from their side, as we've been seeing like videos, and they've been showing these videos on the news, and they've been sharing these posters online about, like, what we can as a community can do to help people who are having hard times at home. And we need to understand that the women, especially women in Bhutan, who are exposed to this kind of domestic violence, are women who work, who are who don't have a job, and they are dependent on somebody. So this is a very sensitive situation and a topic to say, because they need the support, but then they're being exploited by their own family members. So I feel like this commission, the National Commission for Women and Children, have taken really great steps on educating people, not only the victims, but also people in the community, about what they can do to help people who are suffering. And yeah, and I have seen a lot of these campaigns being increased in these times. So if there is no other panelist that wants to share, anyone from the Indian side would like to talk about?
Yeah. So, like the issue of domestic violence, like Winstok, you just mentioned, it's a very sensitive issue right now that has emerged. And I believe, this is not the reality with India or Bhutan per se, but like, I think most of the countries globally, because like even United Nations, they pointed out right now, like domestic violence has been a very important issue that has emerged amidst, during this pandemic situation. It, and indirectly it points towards this lacuna in our education system, and a lacuna in our the gender mentality, be it males or females, because so these are the two important factors that contribute to the worsening of the situation. And like how India has dealt towards this a very critical problem is, by establishing like helplines, they have made facilitated the services of counselors to women. And I think that's it. But there is a lot more that needs to be done to cope this issue. Like at least right now, having a hotline and having easier access to counselor is the need of the hour. But with a long term vision, I think there needs to be a change in how we as members of the community, we effectuate a positive change in the mentality. How we as members of this community, we being the youth of today, and we are the future of tomorrow. It is upon us to to facilitate and harbor a positive change in our education system also. It is like upon us, how we in the future effectuate this change, wherein females or males, both of them are represented as equals, be it workplace or in our homes or even in the schools. It is it's very much important that in whatever professional arena that we may step into tomorrow, wherever we may go, like it is upon us to to instill that sense of equality amongst our peers, and facilitate that vision in the future. But for like right now, I think there is a lot more that should be done. And it is basically via increasing awareness about this problem, by like circulating the information to the narrow corridors of our society. Because I think this is that is a very problematic area, because information doesn't reach over there, and women are not even aware about their rights. Women are not aware how they can redress their problems. So I think it is upon the government and even for the NGOs to to further uh, you know uh, like connectivity to those areas in order to raise awareness. And after an issue is also reported, like whatever I said earlier, it was basically about the steps that can be undertaken to increase vocalization about this issue. The next step should be to foster a right kind of like counseling, to foster like counseling services, be it for the culprit and even the victim. We need counseling for both of them, because at the end, the problem doesn't end with fostering solutions in order to address how the victim has faced the problem. The problem will only be effectively eradicated when we try to plug the place where this arises from. So I think like these two steps would be like I would like to see change being driven in these areas.
Yeah.
I'd like to add on,
Mhm.
it's just a thought. I think domestic violence and mental health is related, especially when boys are young. When they want to express something, they're told to shut up and man up. So I think that builds, you're not allowed to share your feelings. You're not supposed to be an emotional person. And everyone says women are emotional creatures, but I think men are too, but they're not allowed to speak out. And that actually builds, and then when they grow up, there is lack of empathy in them. So I think we have to normalize uh, men being emotional beings. That's it.
Thank you for your views. And I think we'll take one last question, and that relates to what Sawan just said. And it's like, what are some measures that can be taken to contain the adverse effect of mental health during these the COVID times? So anyone would like to answer that?
Can I give a short answer to that?
Yeah.
I'll make it short. Right now, because of the virus, uh, uh, people who are in the quarantine centers, they are given phone numbers, and they're advised to call. They're advised to just speak up. But what about the ones who are not in the center? So I think, like I mentioned that time, a hotline would be really nice. But even if that is not possible, I think centers should be easily accessible, and uh, there shouldn't be like hesitance. People shouldn't be hesitant to actually seek the services. So I think the first and foremost, and it could be a try, is to start with a hotline.
Thank you. So anybody else wants to add anything on what are some of the measures that we can take?
Yeah. So, like while we are talking about mental health, like how Savan has rightly pointed out, it's very important to have hotlines so that, whoever is facing an issue, they can, voice their concerns and voice out their problems. But I think like this is a very apt solution. But like before this, I think, we as members of this community, we actually need to, like curb the stigmatization that is associated with discussing issues related to mental health. We need to actually start normalizing concerns and issues which emerge out of mental health. We need to start talking about it more, be it on social media platform, be it amongst our family members or friends. So talking about it more, it will actually you know de-escalate the stigma that is associated with this a very normal human problem. So I think like I would like to see a change driven in that area, wherein we as members of the community, we actually talk about how we feel, how we are doing, and you know be more considerate towards each other.
Thank you so much.
Can I please get an opportunity to add on to
Yeah,
that? I think we can relate this to drug abuse. See, people consider drug abuse as a habit, as something negative that you do. But then when it is considered as a disease, then there are solutions. So I think educating us on mental health is not a solution. Educating our parents and the ones who look after us, our elders, I think they should know about mental health, about drugs. I think educating them is more important than educating us. It is equally important, but then even they have to know so that they can help us and they can guide us into to help ourselves.
thank you. So I guess on that note, I'd like to stop with the question answer session, and we'll move on with the closing.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for everyone, the speakers as well as the audience. I was just going through, the audience is having another conversation in the chat box, but it's equally informative. So I would urge anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to go through that, because they've responded to some questions as well. So again, I'd like to thank the audience as well as, of course, speakers for an incredibly fruitful and very meaningful conversation that all of us have had. And so some of the key kind of takeaways that I was noting down while the conversation was ongoing was that we need to, of course, focus on the spirit of community that is becoming all important in a time like this. We are turning to those around us for support in various kind of spaces, whether it's with like daily needs, with mental health support, with just general a feeling of just having human beings around you, even if they cannot physically be there. So I think the spirit of community is one of the biggest things that has emerged as a result of the pandemic. Two, of course, is the personal as well as the larger focus on education, the growth of technology, how important technology will become post this pandemic, when we're possibly looking at, for example, purely digital classrooms or working from home for a longer period of time. So there are a lot of companies that have announced work from home, for example, to the end of the year, possibly a couple of months into next year. And of course, one of the key, again, takeaways is the environment, whether there, of course, there's a pro and con, I think, in terms of what environmental impact will be resulted after this pandemic. And, so that's something that, of course, is yet to be seen. But one of the good things, at least so far, is that there have been a vast reduction in pollution levels that have been noted across the world. A lot of spaces that had previously not had seen receding in wildlife have seen a resurgence of flora and fauna in those areas. So that's obviously something to, again, be happy and smile about. And before I say our final goodbyes, I'd request all the audience members to turn on their video cameras so we can take a virtual group picture to kind of commemorate this webinar. So if everyone could keep their audios off, but cameras on, please.